We had done earlier in this year, we talked about Romans, and we talked about some of the key themes, the key concepts of Romans. Let's start by defining what battle means, the key concept of battle. So I'll ask this question: what might a battle involve? Now, remember, I'm not looking for the most detailed descriptions here. You can be telling me anything related to battle that you may already know from previous learning, you learned this year, or something you know of from outside of school. So, what might a battle involve, Izzy? So fighting, I think that's a great place to start. Let's hear from Kira.
There might be horses and armour.
Yeah, so we've got animals or vehicles to battle, armour, so protective equipment, or things to protect people in the battle. Anna? Invasion could be linked in some way. Now, we talked about invasion in the Roman topic, about how that was forced expansion. That was taking somebody else's land for yourself without their permission. So an invasion involved a number of battles. Hands down, I can pick. Let's hear from Cameron. Violence. Now, violence linked to fighting, so I'm going to stick it up there. Absolutely, a battle is full of violence, because fighting is violence, and then I think there's an end result here. If there's lots of violence rather, in a battle, there's going to be an end result, Olivia, which is people dying. And I think it's really important to have in our mindset. We are talking about something that leads to people dying, and the side that has a lot of people dying tends to be, if this was a game we're talking about, it's not a game, but if it was, Johnny?
So most people dying would be the losers?
Yeah, the losers. So if there's a loser in a battle, there are losers in battle. That implies also, there is also, in contrast, Scarlett, a winner. So we might have a loser in a battle, we might have a winner in a battle. But we also may have a battle that ends in a draw. That's true as well. That doesn't mean also that everybody on one side wins. Sometimes you can have a few people on one side winning, sometimes they might lose based on the outcome. We'll talk about that in a bit more detail later. Anything else we want to throw out to me here? I'll let you tell me now, Sophia. So it could involve countries. Now, interestingly, today, our learning will not focus on two different countries, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So, weapons, which link, I guess, to armour, weapons that are used for the fighting, the violence and the death. Rupert? Your fair share of blood. So with that said, let's link back to our chronology that we've just been talking about. We said where the shooters fit in our timeline of history. 1485 to 1603 is the period. So let's build on what you've told me about battles and draw the lens in. I'm not talking about any battle you may have thought of now, but what might battles in 1485 have included? So take this idea and apply it to the chronology. So with that said, I know in 1485, we don't have lightsabers, because we might see that in Star Wars, although that's a long time ago, galaxy far, far away, etc. But that's not going to be involved in a battlefield in 1485, like the Battle of Bosworth. But what will a battle in 1485 include? Alex?
It probably will include lots of iron and metal.
Okay, great, I like that. So iron and metal, and give me a specific, Alex.
Because they're swords and armour.
Okay, fantastic. So swords, iron type of metal, so swords and armour. So we're actually now listing weapons we think will be included in 1485. Swords being probably one of the main ones. We've got other things we can list off at this point as well. Hey Cam? Shields used for protection. If I was thinking of battles in the future, perhaps we wouldn't have swords and shields, but in 1485, absolutely important. Johnny?
You'd have a navy, but they would have cannons.
So we could have a navy in 1485, and the phrase navy now means a lot of different things in the types of ships we would have. We're talking in 1485, if it's a ship, it's going to be a wooden ship. We do have cannons in 1485. We learned that last week, because we were told by Sophia that different countries took part in wars. And that's often true. Okay? A lot of our understanding of war might be things like World War I, World War II. We talked where multiple countries were involved. We talked about the Romans, where we know that the Romans went and invaded other countries, other areas. Now, we have a word here that we're going to define, which is a civil war, in two groups within a country. A civil war known as the War of the Roses. Now, the War of the Roses had gone and been fought sporadically since 1455. Now, the word sporadically means on and off fighting. So it's not like from 1485 until 1455 rather than 1485, every day was full-on battle. That's not the case. But over that period of 30 years, these houses were at each other. And I say houses because, as you can see at the bottom of our screen, the battles in the War of the Roses were fought between the House of York and the House of Lancaster. Now, ultimately, if we think back to the concept of a battle, one thing we perhaps didn't talk about, but we did talk about winners and losers, is ultimately what was to be won and what was to be lost in this war that had taken place over 30 years. Now, the House of York and the House of Lancaster both had a claim to the throne in England. That means that both heads of the House of York and Lancaster believed that they should be king. They should be the king of England. With that said, when the War of the Roses was taking place, the House of York were ruling England. The king, where our battle takes place in 1485, was King Richard III. Now, Richard III was the king of England. And Henry Tudor, who was now a leading figure in the House of Lancaster, who was now ultimately leading the House of Lancaster, wanted to challenge that rule. So what was the prize? This battle takes place in 1485. What did both sides want to happen? What did they want at the end of the battle? What did they want at the end of the war? Poppy? Yeah, they wanted to be king. It's as simple as that sometimes. They wanted to be king. Henry Tudor was not the king. He had a claim to the throne.